You are being forwarded to the contact center coach.
This program is sponsored by Proponisi, where I'm the president and CEO. Proponisi is the Greek word for coaching. We provide SaaS technology to centers like yours. Most contact centers struggle with their people, whether it be overcoming monotony, attrition, or getting superior performance. Our solution makes it easier and cost-effective to get even more than you could possibly have expected from your front line. The result is loyal customers, engaged employees, and winning, provable, profitable results. You can reach us at proponisi.com.
Hello and welcome to the Contact Center Coach video podcast. I'm Michael Tamer, and if you've spent any time with me, it's mostly been by audio. You've listened to the Contact Center Coach. We've got 79 different audio podcasts out there, and in those podcasts, all you do is hear me talking and droning on. And so the video podcasts are designed for me to bring bright, intelligent, much smarter than I am, experts in the contact industry to share their vision, their perspective, and mostly their experience with you. And this week is no exception. We have another spectacular guest, and that's Tim Montgomery. Tim, welcome. Glad to have you.
Well, thanks, Michael. Great to be here. Great to see you again. I followed you for the last 25 years.
Well, there you go. So we both agree that we're old. So with that, let me share why you're listening to Tim. And you know what? I'm going to read a bunch of stuff about him. But to me, he's whenever I think of him, I think of workforce management guru. That this guy just gets contact centers, and he gets the core concept, which is that you have to have the right people in the seats. But he's so much more than that, and is so much more into understanding and recognizing, doing something that I'm really passionate about, which is the people and working with them and getting the most out of them and creating an environment where they can excel. And of course, the customer experience can be wonderful as well. So with that, let me tell you a little bit about Tim. Tim's been a major force in the call center and customer service industry. He's guided thousands of contact center professionals to implement creative and effective solutions. During his career, he has held a variety of leadership and executive positions with some of America's most celebrated and respected companies, USA and Coca-Cola. In addition to his diverse corporate experience, he's also founding partner in 3 successful startup companies, and I'll mention a couple of those in a moment. He's also personally assisted some of the world's most recognized service organizations, Dell and Mitsubishi Motors and Farmers Insurance, Prudential, the Gartner Group, Harvard Medical School. He's an accomplished author and has written numerous insightful and forward-thinking articles and white papers on a range of leadership and management. He's contributed to a number of complex books in the areas of leadership and business management, customer relationship management. He's recognized as a really talented speaker. You know, he's done workshops and keynotes in 7 different countries. He's probably spoken to more than 30,000 customer service and contact center professionals worldwide. He's also in an elite group of executives who have earned a certification from the ICMI and has been a professional member of the National Speakers Association. Professional career includes active duty and reserve assignments in the United States Navy. Thank you for serving our country. He's earned both his BBA in accounting and MBA degrees from the University of Texas and a Lean Six Sigma certification from Villanova University. I'm going to take a breath and tell you, but that's not all. The founder and managing partner of Service Level Group, which was a certified veteran-owned small business. His most recent accomplishment was building and selling the first 100% cloud-based BPO call center called CSG. In 5 years, it grew to nearly 1,000 employees and was twice named by Inc. magazine as one of America's fastest growing companies. He recently sold that in the last couple of years to Qualfon. So he's got it all, lots of experience. Tim, again, welcome. Great to have you with us.
Thanks, Michael. That's kind of embarrassing, but I appreciate you taking the time.
Well, you know what? That's just a humble kind of embarrassing. So listen, I just called you a workforce management guru. And one of the notes that I read in your BPO that you had that had 1,000 agents, one of the things that you wrote is that, talking about managing the agent, not the seat, it said specifically CSG leaders, which is you and your partner, concentrate only on behaviors that are within the agent's control: attendance, schedule adherence, and continuous improvement. Our scorecards and conversations with our agents are around show up, follow your schedule, and get better?
Yeah, that was really what we recruited using that. And the company was Culture Service Growth, and that was purposeful because we wanted everyone that walked into the call center every day to be focused on culture, and our leaders were focused on culture. When we started thinking about culture and how we promote that in a contact center, we said we're going to take the numbers off the agent's back. The agent's success are our leadership's responsibility. So we made it simple for them to understand it. Show up for work. When you're at work, follow your schedule and continually get better. So we're going to help you do all of those things. And we're going to have open conversations around life. Because as you know, life in a contact center is tough for agents in most environments. I mean, they're in their seat, they're monitored all day long, metrics are thrown at them. And we said, we're not going to talk to you about numbers. We're going to help you. If you're not showing up for work on time, we're going to ask you why and help you get better. You know, if you can't work because you had a change in your life, maybe a divorce and you don't have the care that you used to, okay, we'll change your schedule. You know, you don't have to wait until you bid again on it. We're going to work with you. And, we tell them you just can't get divorced every 6 months, but, we'll work with you. And then that's what we taught our leaders to lead. And if you're not following the schedule, it's not a number, it's what's happening. What's the trend? Why is this happening to this person? Have that conversation with them and then get better. We said, it's your responsibility as a leader to help them get better. So that's the coaching, the quality. It was never a number. And that was pretty hard for even our clients, because we had very large clients, 8 Fortune 500 companies that we took calls for, and they had certain rules for scorecards. And it was, you had to have a 98% or 75% or whatever it was. And in my mind, it's always been kind of meaningless. So we would have scorecards on calls that had no score at the end. It was, you had to think about it, 6 or 7 questions written out. You have that coaching conversation. So you can use that, the quality and the coaching at the same time. So that's how we ran the business. And one of the things that we used to measure our culture success was our turnover rate. And in call centers, the turnover rate can be really, really high, and it's extremely high in most BPOs. But we knew we were being successful focusing on culture by our very, very low turnover rate, and we would manage and watch that on a regular basis.
So I hear that, but I'm gonna ask you to answer it again, because I called you a workforce management guru. So I know you believe in it. I know you understand it. You can probably teach it better than anyone else in the world. And I know there are a lot of centers out there that say they don't have enough budget. Their management doesn't understand, and they have got to run this thing by workforce management, and that's just the law, and it's just the way things go. But you're an expert in it, so help them to understand how they can navigate through that and still do the kind of things that you talked about.
Yeah, you have to get it right, and then you have the numbers, and the metrics, and you use the platforms, the systems, and but if you're approaching managing agents from the perspective of why your adherence to schedule and your attendance rate and your turnover, all those things that impact your ability to staff properly, they're going to be better, and it's going to be easier, because I'm not fighting with people over numbers. We're just getting the numbers better by focusing on behaviors. So that's one thing, how workforce management impacted. The other thing is you have to have one version of the truth. And that's something you don't have in a lot of organizations, because you're getting numbers from multiple systems. And because we would live and die by our ability to make sure we answered the phone, we had to be really good at ensuring our numbers were right for staffing purposes. So we had robust long-term planning models. We had very good intraday tracking. But what we would do is have one version of the truth. So every coach and leader looked at the same metrics. There was no variation of metrics. Leaders wouldn't go into the WFM platform and create their own customized reports for their team. We all looked at the same thing. We all managed to the same thing. And in a lot of call centers, there's so much surprise when things don't go right. But you actually know when it's not going to go right. At 8 o'clock in the morning, if you're managing workforce the right way, you can see and plan the day. So the other part of this, I think it's important for people that are struggling with things like budgets and those types of things, is I always focused more on the advanced numbers versus the historical. And I worked with tons of companies that have teams basically scoring the game after it's over. You know, what I would teach people is, you have so much data, you can actually predict the future. So if you're going out a month, it's not a month-long daily forecast, it's a month-long interval forecast. And you know every single day something different could happen. But what you do is you say, I'm going to make changes the Monday before and the Tuesday before and the Wednesday before. I'm going to adjust based on what I know. If I know 10 people quit on Friday, I know Monday morning I have to do something different. So let's do something different on Friday. So that's the way that I've always called it, and I've written about this several times, and I call it reacting in advance. And people say, what's the most successful thing call center leaders can understand how to do? And that is react in advance. Unfortunately, majority of call centers react based off current conditions, and then the executives react based off of things that happened 2 or 3 weeks ago in the mountains of reports that they get. So it's, to answer the WFM question, I believe the majority of WFM should be done in advance, but it's where the leaders, everyone in our organization and the companies that I work with, the leaders have to understand what they do in WFM. It's not that group of geeks in the corner. They are truly a part of your success. And if you work closely with them and you collaborate in advance, your job, your life is so much easier. So that's kind of my pitch on WFM and call centers. So
I just want to tell the people that are watching this, I told you so. I told you this was going to be great. So with that, I just heard you say one version of the truth and reacting in advance. Mm-hmm. So love that. So another thing that I read was that was for supervisors, right? That each team lead at CSG is required to spend at least half of his or her time on the call center floor conducting real-time side-by-side monitoring and coaching. Now, let's acknowledge the fact that for a lot of contact centers, there is nobody side-by-side anymore because a lot of people have gone out, but they are coming back, and we've got a lot more hybrid organizations. For organizations that have supervisors that they can't find any coaching time for them, they're looking at 10%. Our friend Bob Furness tells the story of the 67 different things that they come up with that supervisors had to do, and you try to figure out a way to get rid of that and to bring time back. How'd you get to half their time?
Well, one thing we decided when I started the company is we're not going to have offices. Nobody's going to have an office, and everybody's going to be in the call center floor. And we did something unique. We put the supervisor's desk that were the same size as the agents, the managers, right on the floor. Everybody. For the 5 years that I had the company before I sold it, I sat right next to call center agents every single day and listened to them and coached them. And just that alone, Michael, that when they're at their desk, they're listening to their whole team, and they're able to quickly say, oh, that was really good. Did you get that? Or maybe next time you might want to think about this. They're forced to do it. And you made an important comment. It's the 67 things that the call center leaders are forced to do. If you have one version of the truth, somebody else created the reports that you're going to use to look at, are they following their schedule? Are they getting better? And are they coming to work? You don't have to do any of that. You don't have to track any of that. You have all that information for you. That right there frees you up. And the other thing over the years working with call centers is I would go into meetings and there'd be 8 supervisors in a meeting for an hour that wouldn't really say anything. They were there to contribute to the meeting. What we would do is we would have, 1 or 2, and everybody else could be gone. And if something important happened, we could go, because we were open and all of our floors in our building were open cubes. Everybody sat around together. It was real easy to send information. And we were in a unique place because when I had this idea 12 years ago for a 100% cloud-based company, it was on the leading edge of this. So we were early adopters of everything from Google Workspace. We had this mantra, no Microsoft products are allowed. And because of that, we had a collaborative team from the very beginning. I'm seeing a lot of companies now do what we were doing 12 years ago using Teams. But back then we had it. Everybody was on the same platform. Everybody was on the same system. We could get information out quickly, and there was not a whole lot of duplication of effort in our environment. But yeah, you're on the floor half the time, walking around, talking to people, collaborating. And we, instead of having 1 or 2 coaching sessions a month, we would have 20 or 30, because 15, 20 of them are just informal, helping you get better. That's the leader's job.
So, we have a lot of people that listen to this podcast that are brand new, and either they've just become a supervisor, or maybe they've become a contact center manager, maybe they just have a passion for growth. And career growth's a little bit hard. There aren't a lot of pathways in a contact center, right? You can go become a level 2, or you can become a supervisor, or obviously supervisor, move your way into QM, or you might workforce management, or maybe training. So you're between your experience at the BPO and just your experience over time, share a little insight and a little perspective on that new leader, what they should be looking to do, what they should be filling themselves up with, and where they ought to go. Tell them a little about what's in front of them.
I think from a new leader perspective, there's so many tools out there, like even your podcast, and then on-demand training, and absorb that as much as you can. We used to take all of our leaders through a program, and it was similar to ICMI's overview of contact centers. And I'll tell you a story about USAA 25 years ago or so. We were going through a transformation. We had a 20,000 seat call center, and all spread out all over the country, and it wasn't being run like a call center. I had an aha moment when I went to one of Brad Cleveland's 2-day seminars, and I said, holy crap, we're not doing this right. And went back, and we brought Brad in. We brought Brad in with our executive team. And the CEO at the time, we were sitting in a room with Brad, and the CEO said, we're going to change. And I want every single person in our company to understand how call centers operate, that understand the basics of Erlang C, that understand and appreciate the power of one, and all those things that we've taught over. This was 25 years ago. Well, that program is still in place at that organization. Every new leader goes through it. And when I'm working with companies, it doesn't take long to be in a focus group with call center leaders to understand they really don't understand the dynamics of what happened. They get taught on their job, sitting with people, following the training. They don't know what goes into WFM, for example. In our organization, excuse me, I'm getting over COVID, and it's still lingering. In our organization, we made everybody sit in every department and understand what everybody did. We would sit down, we would go through ongoing sessions with the basics, call center 101. And in a lot of organizations, they don't do that, but you can do it as an individual. There's so much valuable information out there, and free information and white papers, and just read them and absorb them. And I think if you take that information back to others in your organization, they'll have some light bulb moments and go, wow, our job could be much easier if we didn't run it as a numbers organization. We really focused on behaviors. That's for new folks. One of the other things that I would recommend, and call centers do, is sit with the agents and leaders and ask them what they want to do. And we would have call center agents say, I just want to do this. This fits my life perfect. And we have call center agents that say, I want to go to HR eventually. Okay, how about this? Work with us, follow your schedule, get better. And what we'll do is at a certain point, we'll let you go observe AR, understand what they're doing. And then when we have an opening after you've been here for a while, we can quickly move you into that position. It's good for us, and it's good for you. And we would have those conversations of, what do you want to do? What is your goal from here? And some of them would say, look, I just want to work and finish school and go get a job being an engineer somewhere. Okay, let's work towards that together. Let's find a job that's really good for you in your goals. Maybe you want to, kind of crude, but we would have some campaigns and some companies, and most companies have this, and I call it following the bounce ball type calls. It comes in, I just follow the bouncing ball, and I'm done. Training can be a day on some of those. And if that's going to fit your lifestyle because you're going to be focused on school and you really want to just have something come in, do it, we can do that for you. But I think leaders in general should be open and honest about what they want to do from here.
So, I can't really jump off culture without spending a little bit of time on it, because you're touching upon a number of the different things that you did with culture. And the concept of using culture as something that's kind of a core competency. I mean, it's something that you can build on and that you're committed to. Most people have a tendency to think culture is, we're going to put up a couple signs, we're going to have a couple of potluck dinners, and that's really kind of where it's going to stop. And so yet in today's environment, probably the biggest challenge people have is turnover, but it's that they can't find any new people to fill the spots when there is turnover. So holding on to their very best people, which is always wildly important, it's never in 40 years gone down. If I can hold on to great people, it obviously affects my turnover because I'm keeping the people around that I want to keep around. But I've also got to attract new people. And one of the ways you can do that is with culture. So tell me a little bit more about your perspective on culture. I was reading that, you had a no PowerPoint culture at your organization, which again is not something that you put on a sign. It's obviously trying to communicate a different kind of message. So if you wouldn't mind, talk to me a little bit about culture.
Yeah, and a lot of our culture was built on what we've already talked about. Show up, follow your schedule, get better, treating people with respect, and that goes a long way in any organization. But it's especially important in contact centers. And I think a couple of the things that we did that were kind of cool that impacted our culture. We had the city of San Antonio come to us and say, hey, we have a huge homeless campus in San Antonio that they spent a ton of money on. And it's a great place. Our homeless people on the street in San Antonio is a lot less than other cities of over 1 million people. And it's because of this community. Well, the way they had this structured program where you would come in off the streets, you would agree to certain things, you would have barracks, you would go through a process, and then you would graduate and then move out into, they would help you subsidize. But they came to us and said, hey, what do you guys think about putting part of your call center on our campus and employing them as they're going through this 9-month program or whatever? So now they have a job, they have a way to make money. And we said, absolutely, let's go figure this out. And we ended up building a 100-seat call center in the middle of this homeless shelter. Excuse me. And they started, so we started hiring and training and doing the normal stuff down there. And it was just this amazing thing because they were able to now make money and get a paycheck as they were going through this program. We gave flexibility so they could have their classes and their meetings and things like that during the day. And, and go off instead of having a 15-minute break, they could have a 2-hour break and go do their thing. It worked really, really well. And we also gave back the profits to the homeless anything that we made on that, we would give back to that homeless shelter organization called Haven for Hope. What we then did is once they graduated the program, we brought them into our main campus and they were part of our community. And that in itself was one of the things that a lot of our employees were really proud of, that they were part of a company that not only did this, they didn't make any money off of it, they're giving the money back, and they're also embracing people, giving them, helping them get apartments close to the contact center, making sure it was on bus lines if most of them didn't have cars. And we did that. And we had people that rallied around that, and it made them feel really good. We did about 100% of our recruiting was internal. So our employees were our champion. So that answers one of your questions is we would have people come in, and it wasn't where I'm going to give you $500 if this person stays 6 months and you just start throwing stuff against a wall. They wanted people that would come in and be good in this group. So one of the ways we did this, and this was an employee suggestion, and it turned out to be one of the pivot points in our company. They called it CSG's Got Talent, and every person that passed the profile in HR would be brought in for a panel meeting. So, you know, in a lot of companies, the last one, especially in higher level, you go into a panel and there's 3 or 4 people. Well, we would have 10 frontline employees go into a conference room and just ask these 4 or 5 people that are in there at the same time questions. And they were simple questions. And the employees would make the decision. They would say, okay, yeah, this person, you know, they looked really rude. They weren't, you know, they weren't paying attention. The body language wasn't there. They get voted off. So it's like being on America's Got Talent, and we would vote them off. But we would let the employees make that final decision. And the question to them was, do you want to sit next to this person every single day? And sometimes it'd be no. We said, okay, you know, we let them go and keep the good ones. And people, they love that. So they were part of it. And then we had a culture queen, and her only job was to work with leaders and everyone else on culture, and they'd all have meetings with her. She'd go down all the teams and we'd talk about culture. And that eventually evolved into direct communication with me. So she would be in these meetings and hear a rumor. Something's going to happen. And she would say, hey, this is kind of the rumor that's on the street. Okay, by the end of that day, we'd have a conversation about whatever rumor it was and squash it. And people loved that kind of direct line of communication.
So we've got the fact that hiring really needs to look a little bit more like a fraternity or a sorority rush than than your standard hiring process, because you want people that fit, that fit the culture. And in order to fit a culture, they have to know everybody has to know what the culture is, and so that they can see it and advise it. So I have to ask the question, did you ever calculate out how much money it either cost you or saved you to have those 10 or 15 reps in a room with, 4 new hires? I mean, because again, that's all part of workforce management, right? We got to schedule that in, and that costs money, and they're not on the phone. And, in a lot of companies today, they won't even let them off the phone to learn for 2 or 3 minutes because they just don't have the time.
Well, it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning, workforce planning. You just include that in your plan, and it pays for itself with turnover. Because when people look at turnover, they say, oh, it's the cost of this and this and this. No, it's the lost cost of productivity. And that is the most expensive thing about turnover. And when people talk about it, I say, well, how long does it take a rep to become really proficient at their job, where they're doing the transaction in around 5 minutes? Oh, that can take 9 months. Well, guess what? When you lose a person, that's 9 months of lost workforce management productivity. So we were able to measure it in turnover. So if I had 10 people off the phone for a day, but they were all really productive, that's much better than having 10 people that aren't productive, in the environment. So if that helps keep them and lowers turnover, I felt it more than paid for itself in the end.
Yeah. So to that end, I cannot tell you how many conversations I've been in where people have started looking at the we're looking at their stats, and we're looking at AHT, and all of a sudden you see this big bump in AHT, and everybody goes, yeah, that's the new hire class. That's the new hire class. That's the new hire class. And it's the same answer always. There's never any thought of, well, maybe we ought to do something about that. Try to see if we can change that, as opposed to just absorbing the fact that that's what it is. That can't always be the answer. Hey, I'm going to kind of turn a little bit, and wanted to talk to you. You mentioned, and they're pretty popular terms, kind of employee centric, customer centric. So tell me a little bit about your perspective on customer centric through the filter of a contact center. And then obviously I know we're repeating some of the same things, but they're basic. And the reason we repeat them is because they're core. If you get it and you figure it out, you're on your way to success. So talk a little about customer centric, what your perspective is on that, what that means to you, and what that looks like for a contact center.
I think a lot of it, and this is not only us, but companies that I've worked with, your frontline agents know how the processes or lack of impact agents and their, customers and their perception of the company. And I think a lot of it has, feedback. And I've consulted with a ton of companies, and when I go in and talk to them about here's what your customers are feeling, and show them the actual stats of what they're doing to their customers, a lot of them will say, well, how did you learn all this? Well, I did 10 focus groups with your frontline reps. And they're telling us, they know that the reason the customer's mad is because they have to tell them this. So if we're going to run a business focused on customer satisfaction and being customer centric, the people that provide the service should be part of the ongoing improvement process. And so a lot of times I just say, ask them. You never ask them. Now, when I'm sitting side by side and they know the consultants there, they're really happy to tell me, oh my God, this happens a lot. And this happens a lot. At USAA, again, 25 years ago, we implemented this program in the call center. Again, it was a very, very large contact center organization, but it was called Every Contact Has Opportunity. Every contact has opportunity, ECHO. And that program allowed frontline agents after every single call to document what happened on the call. And in a system that the question to them is, does somebody else in the organization need to know what just happened on this call? And it was before the days of call recording on every call. And this is so ancient, we still had tape recorders on there. So it really wasn't a way to take what you've done over the years, which is automate calls and be able to get customer sentiment and those types of things. But this went all the way up to the top of the house. And at that time, I was in a position where once we implemented this, the president of USA would walk over with a stack of papers and red pens around it, put it on my desk and say, we need to figure this out. Okay. And then it's full circle. So I could go back to that frontline agent and say, hey, we fixed this problem based on what you put in. And they go tell their friends that they really care about what we're doing to the customer, and let's fix it. So the conversation, Every Contact Has Opportunity, is focused on the customer, but engaging the employee to help the customer.
So we experienced that, consulting, when you start asking people questions, and invariably you start to get the same answer over and over and over again. It doesn't take very long to find the issue or to find the challenge, because everybody knows it. When you've got 100 or 500 or 1,000 people, the standard problems come up pretty quickly, because everybody's experiencing it over and over and over again. And you just simply have to you have to be willing to ask the questions and get. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no. It's just funny because there was I worked with a large pharmacy benefit management company, and I was sitting with reps, and I was like on my 10th call, and it was 2 of the 10 calls was somebody calling in to understand what was printed at that time on the top of the label. They printed something there, and in many cases they say, oh well, that's just an internal tracking number, or it's just on the bottom. And I quickly did the math, and I walked into the leader's office 10 minutes into the job, and I said, hey, I found a way to eliminate thousands and thousands of calls every week. How? Just fix the top of your bottles, because every single rep was getting 1 or 2 calls an hour multiplied by 700 reps, and you're like, this is an easy fix, and it impacts staffing. You don't need to here's what we're going to do. If we eliminate these calls, who has to fix that? Let's go to marketing and show them the data and show them the impact on our operations. And so we fixed it, and it was that easy. But that problem had been in that organization for years, and they were typical call center fighting over budgets, and I can't have enough people, and just solve some of those problems that can be solved at the call center level, and you have instant capacity.
So just kind of a curveball question for you, but what's the best advice anybody's ever given you about the contact center? And then I'm gonna follow up and say, what's the standard advice or your first advice that you give somebody that's a leader in a contact center?
A gentleman that we know, Jay Minucci, he and I have worked together for a lot of years. Our claim to fame was we developed the workforce management solution that was used by more call centers than anyone in the world, than any organization in the world. This was many, many months ago. It was Excel based, and it was free. So you could download it and use it. So it wasn't really something that it sounded impressive. But Jay, he looked at me one day and he said, you know what? This is just math. Getting all this call center staffing right and budgeting and all that. He said, it's math. It's math. And we developed this process working with finance and executives. And we called it a bottom-up budgeting process for call centers because it was unique to call centers. And we would go through it from the bottom up. And we would just say, do you want your reps to have 2 15-minute breaks a day? And by the way, they have to by law. Okay. So you have to have that in. And then we'd go in and we'd say, can they have vacation? Yeah. And we'd ask all the call center things. And we're going to get them to follow their schedule about 90% of the time. And here's why, because they get caught on long calls. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, we go all the way up. And then how quickly do you want to get to it? And you put in service level and all that stuff. And then you hit the enter button. You say, okay, you're going to need 300 people to do this. They're going to say, well, no, we're only budgeted for 275. And I said, okay, let's go down this list and which one of these things do you want to eliminate? Because we can't make it with this. And then they're like, oh, and we say, it's just math. And the math doesn't lie. 1 + 1 is 2. This is call center math from the ground up. So that's the best advice I would give. The best advice that I've been given is by Jay, and it's just math. So that's
very nice
for Jay. Yeah.
Hey, I have to ask you, since you were there from the inception, and I'm not even quite sure what the question is to ask, but cloud contact centers, you know more about it probably anybody in the world. So tell me what an informed contact center leader needs to know about that.
It's interesting because 12 years ago, there weren't a whole lot of big companies doing call centers in the cloud, and they weren't doing anything else in the cloud. And we were told by a lot of companies that this idea is going to fail miserably because people aren't going to allow you to move their calls to the cloud. They're not going to trust it. And it turned out to be just the opposite. And the reason we had 8 Fortune 500 companies is because we were 100% cloud-based, and they wanted to test it. They wanted to see what it was like. And then the one thing that we all of a sudden realized about the cloud is everybody gets the latest and greatest all the time. Mm-hmm. So in contact centers, a lot of them are 4 or 5 releases behind. We don't have this. Your cloud contact center platforms they're all built in general to work together. So they have plugins. So all the main ACD, CCAS, they have plugins to Salesforce. When they update their system, it's going to work with Salesforce. So it's almost like you don't have to have the IT department. You don't do a lot of programming. And I love it because we were early adopters of Salesforce for some of it. And we would come in and all of a sudden we had all these new features. And it was just part of the new package. And you get upgraded all the time.
Kind of like a Tesla. Just like a Tesla.
I mean, yeah, it's like, wow, this is really cool. All of a sudden I have this new thing in my phone system that does something that it used to cost a lot of money to get integrated and updated. I mean, I think that's one of the great things about moving to the cloud is you're always up to date on the latest and greatest technology. It's pretty cool.
All right. Well, listen, I only have 2 more questions for you. So the first one is, what do you do when you're not thinking contact center?
It's pretty simple. When I sold the company, it was interesting because of our culture. I sold the company and they said, we're going to pay you your earnout today if you promise to leave tomorrow. And it was part of the culture of the company. They were very, I knew everybody by name, and all the 900 whatever employees knew me that sat at my desk, and we talked to them all the time. And they said, we got to kind of get rid of that. And I said, okay. And I told my wife, I said, hey, I'm basically being fired. I kind of knew this was happening. She said, you know what? Our kids are grown. We've given up a lot to get this done. You retire. Let's just go around the world and go to music festivals. And I said, that's the best thing ever. So I spent the last 6 years going to music festivals. We'll go to 10. We were at ACL, Austin City Limits, last weekend. And we just go hang out for 4 days in another city. And we have a group of friends that we travel with. And then that led to following bands around. And we would go on The road, basically, I mean, really the road with like Mumford and Sons, or last week we were with Spoon for 3 nights, and we'd end up at hotels just hanging out with them. We were in Spain with Kiss, and at their anchor hotel for a week, and they were going to all different cities and playing each night, and then coming back to the hotel. And after the 3rd night, we're just hanging out in the bar, and Tommy Thayer walks in, and I'm just, hey Tom, hey Tim, how you doing? And he'd go over and just hang out with friends. But anyway, so it just became this passion for music, and it's a fun thing for my wife and I to do together. And then to keep me sane, I still do some work with companies, and I have companies that I've worked with for years will call me and say, hey Tim, I want to move to the cloud. What's out there? What's the latest and greatest? Who should I talk to? And I have a bunch of RFPs which don't really change, and I give those things away for free once I know what's going on. If they go talk to these companies, and along the way I'll help you. So it's fun. I still do a little bit of work, but mostly a lot of travel.
Very, very nice. And listen, last question for you. What should I have asked you that I didn't?
What should you have asked me that you didn't? I have to stop and think here, because I rambled on about a lot of the different topics and covered them. I think, is AI going to eliminate the need for a call center? And I did a session with a group of executives during COVID, and their question was about AI, and they were really concerned about it. And they said, can you help us think about the impact of the AI and the new technologies are going to have on the call center agents? What's going to happen? What do we have to do as an organization? Those types of things. And I started out and kind of put every one of them back on their heels, and they said, that's not what we expected to hear, Tim. I said, AI is not about how the call center automates calls and work for the customer that would then lead to fewer reps, which is AI is that in most call center leaders, executives, companies' mind. I said, AI is going to change the way your customer interacts with you. And you need to be ready for that, because customers are going to have new tools at their fingertips that are going to be implemented right away. And you have to be ready to adopt to those processes. And one of the examples is a gentleman named Seth Godin, who's been around forever, and he's a genius. I like to take credit for this, but he's the one that presented this idea of putting it on your Google Calendar that you have this trip this day, and it's going to from here to Oklahoma or whatever, and here's the airlines, and here's all this stuff. And your calendar knows all this, and AI behind the scenes learns all this. And then there's a change in the flight. Well, Google, your calendar behind the scenes, is going to go out to the airline and talk to them, automate, say, hey, what's happening here? And in order for you to have automation for that, you've got to figure out how to communicate with Google. And all of those tools that we're using, the apps right now are, the company puts them out there. So the company is saying, hey, I'm XYZ company, you can talk to Alexa and do these things. So it's still corporate company driven. That's going to change in the next few years, especially with a lot of the innovation. I'm going to drive it, and I'm going to tell you how I want to do automation and AI. And you as organizations have to be ready for that, because you're now not going to have AI driven by this platform that you bought. I believe you're going to have to be able to adopt to a bunch of different platforms that your customers are using. And we overuse this term, I think, to meet the customer where they are, and we go out and say they're here and here. The customer is going to demand this in the future, because they're going to tell you where they are. You're going to go, oh, okay, I've got to adapt it real time to this. So that was kind of my take on AI. And again, I'm amazed at how many companies consider their product AI right now. And they can just say it, it's a buzzword, everybody says, oh, that's great. That's artificial intelligence. We're not even close to being there yet.
Okay, perfect. Well, listen, I am so grateful for the time we got to spend together. It's great to see you. And I'm good to know that somebody's following the music industry closely, and they're they're being taken care of, and that's really, really good. So I'm very, very grateful. To those of you that are listening today, thank you so much for listening and watching. If you've listened to any of my audio podcasts or my video podcasts, I end each one of them the exact same way. And that's to say that you have the capacity to be a great leader. It just requires a lot of hard work. It requires focus, and it requires you to bring alongside someone to help you. And then when you figure it out, for you to go help somebody else. Tim Montgomery is a great example of somebody that came alongside to help you. Take the information that he gave you, put it to use, go do something brilliant in your company, go do something brilliant for your people, and go make a difference, go make a wave. It's been great to talk to you this week. Again, Tim, thank you so much. Look forward to talking to you soon. Bye-bye now.